Okay. So, if you agree, Tino, we would start.
Yes.
And I would start welcoming everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on the time zone you are. Thanks for joining us. This is one of the several webinars we are running as GMI. Maybe somebody of you already participated to others. We are touching several subjects ranging from functional safety to intrinsic safety. We touch some topic which has to do with application of our product in intrinsic safe world or in the functional safety world. Today's we are here with Tino, who is the main actor. We are touching a very specific subject, which is functional safety management. So I'm not going to enter any details because I leave this point to Tino. Just let me introduce who we are. Tino van de Kapel, our Functional Safety Director at GMI. I know Tino since many years, also in our previous professional life with system vendor, functional safety system vendor, providing functional safety equipment. Today we are working together in GMI, and Tino, as our director for functional safety offices, is also providing training consultancies. We are working together with or as a provider of functional safety training courses with TUV Ireland. We provide several training over the year. Of course, now with COVID time, this is not as so easy, but he will tell you something. We have anyway found a way to provide this training to the market anyway. Let me just briefly introduce the company before to go to the subject, to the specific subject. GMI is a manufacturer of field device interface. You can find GMI products in many packages of automation like PCS, ESD, fire and gas. Most of the equipment, if not all, are either intrinsic safe certified or hold a certificate for functional safety, and most of the product can reach up to SIL 3 level as requested or as indicated by the standards. Everything in GMI is designed and produced in Italy. Quality, since we deal with safety, quality is one of our main topic, and we are looking for, and everything before exiting from our premises are tested 100%. And because we feel the responsibility to deliver to the market equipment which target is to save life, to save environment, to save cost for our customers and so on. We are Italian. On the other hand, we have presence worldwide. We have offices, we have distributors, we have a lot of installation, more than 1,000 in several parts of the world. And as I was mentioning before, as functional safety, we are very active, and we are providing, even in COVID time, something like 18 to 20 functional safety training to the market. Tino will tell you something more. Again, we are present worldwide. That means that we are part of the vendor of the main customers, as well as we hold not only functional safety or intrinsic safety certificates, we hold also all the necessary certification to be present locally as requested by any single country. So this is just a short list of our customers. Want to mention that you will receive this presentation so in PDF format as soon as the training is or the webinar is finished. You will receive it through email. Let me add something about before to leave the speech to Tino, something like about this webinar. I will leave the speech to Tino. I will monitor. You have the possibility to interact with us. We have a question and answer section pop-up that you can use if you want to raise question. I will interrupt Tino whenever it is possible and necessary to answer live your questions. We have also a final set of slides which is a collection of question and answer that we collected during the registration and during our previous experience, previous webinar on the same subject. Finally, I want to mention, I forgot what I had to mention, but it will come in my mind maybe later. So without, in order to avoid to lose further time, I leave to the speech to Tino. And that's all. Okay. From my side.
Can you remove the control of the screen, Mauro?
Yes, if I remember how. Stop, no, stop participant sharing. I don't know. Give up remote control. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Tino.
Thank you, Mauro. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for GMI to give me the opportunity to again give some awareness on functional safety in the public, because it is like a public webinar. Mauro told you will get the slides on PDF. You will also see that this webinar will be recorded. So every single second will be available on YouTube channel, which you will find many other webinars which we have done for GMI in the past. As Mauro was saying, I am working together with GMI to provide mainly the training, the competency review training, and also to provide them with some consultancy for different clients and different projects. My background, I'm an instrumentation engineer, so I'm known to keep everything pragmatic, so to keep everything as practical as possible. Today we have chosen one of the topics that is the edition 2 focus of the new standard called, or the new edition called IEC 61511, which has been released since 2016/2017. One of the main focus is to increase the quality of the activities which you are carrying out here in this life cycle. You see here a life cycle in front of you. All these numbers here in the middle, we call this phases. Those are all phase activities. We do have several webinars for all those activities specifically, so we will not talk about this today. We will focus here on the one that is circled or is actually highlighted here with a red box. That's called phase number 10. And in phase number 10, it's all about how do you manage your functional safety? How do you do your assessments? And assessments are those stage assessments here. Again, we have a webinar specific on those assessments. That's the main change also in the edition 2 of the standard. And also in that box or phase number 10, we talk about functional safety audit. But my idea today was here to only mention what is functional safety management, and that is what I'm gonna start. And you can ask yourself the question, why do you have to have another management scheme on top of maybe your quality management scheme? Well, this specific quality safety management scheme, as we call it, functional safety management scheme, is specifically targeting to look on what type of activities you are carrying out in the life cycle. And we have a main goal is to try to reduce human failures. And as you may know or appreciate or understand, the focus of the industry for all these years with the functional safety standard has been mainly dominated by predicting what is the availability of instrumental systems like an SIS or a SIF, etc. And people are too much focusing on PFD calculations, which are known as the probability to fail dangers upon demand calculation. They come up with a certain SIL number, but actually the key fundamental reason of the standard has been totally missed all these years since edition 1 came out in 2004. And if I train engineers, they all talk about SIL classes, they all talk about calculations, they all take data out of databases, and they all try to produce paper to prove how safe they are. But the fundamental issue to try to prove the quality on how they have reduced human failures is, I would say, probably in 80% of all the cases is totally forgotten, not even known. They think because they have a SIL X piece of paper that all of a sudden their complete installation is safe. Now, function safety management is not to be predicted when people will make a failure. That is why we cannot take it into our equation or into a formula to say, when will this person make a failure? So we need to try to increase our quality scheme in the hope with increasing the quality scheme, we will decrease the human failure. And that's a topic for today about functional safety manual. So clearly it has to be throughout the organization. What I often see happening in the industry is that people are training maybe 1, 2, 3 engineers in their organization, and then they all of a sudden think the whole project, the whole activities from all the other people helping them is also functional safe. But you have to have a very clear and strict procedure that is actually binding those people to that procedure to know exactly if they do it this way in the hope and prove it they have done it this way, they can reduce some human failures. In the new edition 2016/2017, I keep on mentioning 2017, which I haven't explained to you. When edition 2 was being released in February 2016, there was a kind of a problem with the released edition 2, where the IEC committee released a, let's say, a revision which was not supposed to be released. It was an older release of revision of draft they have been issuing it. That is why there was a corrigendum out somewhere in September 2016, and there was an amendment out somewhere in August 2017. So the correct edition today, for anyone listening in here into this webinar, your 6.15.11 reference of the IEC of part 1 should have 2017 August, or we call this the CSV consolidated version. That means they will have the edition 2 release with the corrigendum and the amendment all in one document. And in that part 1, which is the normative section of the standard, in that part 1, they say FSM stands for Function Safety Management, shall meet the requirements, or you have a choice here, or you meet the requirements of the 6.15.08 part 1, which is edition 2, which is known as a 2010, which is the April release. There you can try to comply to the Function Safety Management of clause 6, which is paragraph 6. Now, my personal recommendation in the industry is, if you're not a manufacturer, do not try to go by the FSM for the 6.15.08 edition 2, because it's most likely it's going to be so strict for your activities. If you're not a system, let's say, if you're not a system manufacturer producing products like hardware and software firmware development, like in a smart transmitter, hard transmitter, safety PLC, etc., I would say try to go for a second bullet, and that is the FSM, Function Safety Management, meets the requirement for a standard derived from the 6.15.08. In our case, we'll be comparing to the chapter 5 of the 6.15.11, which is the edition number 2 over here. That is the recommendation for the process industry. That's very briefly coming out of one of the training courses. We are doing one of the many different training courses, but we do specific training courses for function safety management for companies who wants to know what is function safety management all about. Then we take them through some templates, some procedures, some examples to show how it could look like. Of course, every single different customer will have a different kind of opinion on how the function safety management needs to be described. But the whole idea is in the function safety management objectives to define your activities, to document those activities in terms of the requirements, in terms of what is the achievement of those activities, how will you monitor the quality of those activities, and how will you assess. The moment you hear assess in functional safety management, very simply speaking, that's always by independent people. when you do something, you cannot make your own assessment, but you can make your own verification. And that's the whole principle of the quality measurement schemes inside the functional safety standard. So you will define, document, monitor, and access everything to do with technical requirements, and also what we call that the non-technical requirements or the management requirements. But engineers has very often the habit, they like everything to do with technical because they do understand that. But management and procedures and documents is typically known as paperwork for them. And most of the engineers, they like to do something. They don't like to write a report on how they have done it, because that's all paperwork. That's all the boring work for a classical engineer. And that's actually one of the issues why we have a lack of quality on most of the activities that you are handling the functional safety standard called the 65011. Second bullet is, in the functional safety management objective, we need to specify those people who are responsible, who are accountable for those activities on a personal level, on a department level, or on an organization level, which are necessary to try to ensure that you have met the objective for functional safety management. And I fully agree that the whole functional safety management is down to competency of people who will carry out the work, of people who will verify the work, of people who will assess the work. And especially the assessor, who is the independent, senior, competent person in the organization, which is independent from a design team for at stage 1, 2, 3, and independent from the operator and maintenance for stage 4 and 5. Well, that senior person needs to make an expert judgment. And as it is an expert judgment, that even can be subjective. So therefore, functional safety management scheme is something that you will have to learn, you will have to perform, you will have to seek the senior competent person who can give your expert judgment to help you to try to achieve your activities in a more quality fashion. All right, Mauro, we are ready for the first poll to see how many.
Yes, let me launch the poll. We would like to get some feedback from our participant. So, if you want to explain the question, Tino, just
sure. So the idea is here. You get a poll, which is this window, which you should see now, and I'm asking you to pick one question, and one question only is the most correct and is the most complete answer. And they say here, FSM is required during the analysis phases. That means in the beginning of the life cycle. During the design phases of the IEC 65011 is answer number B. C, during the operator and maintenance, that means more for the end users. During all the phases of the IEC 65011, except for the decommissioning phase. And E, always for all phases of the IEC 65011 is answer number E. And as you can see on the answers coming in, Mauro, I think this question is much too easy, which is okay. It's just to get an evidence that people are not only logging in and then starting to do other things, so they actually follow the webinar. So I would say we can still leave a few seconds.
Yes.
We only have half of the group awake, which is not good. So every one of you listening in now, as it is free of charge, do us a favor, just click on the button and see what is your first opinion, which answer would be here applicable on this poll question. Okay, Mauro,
okay, Tim, I think we reached a good number of participants to the poll.
You have
few seconds, 3, 2, 1. I end the poll.
Okay.
And I share the result to all. You should see, correct?
Well, luckily for the people who actually answered this, the bottom one, the one with 78%, is indeed, of course, the correct answer. Because functional safety management, as you may have noticed on the life cycle, on the left-hand side, this phase number 10, was covering all the activities. No matter where you are in the life cycle activity, no matter if you are doing a HAZOP or if you are doing the safety requirement specification, or if you are the designer to combine components together, or if you are the programmer programming a safety PLC, or if you are the installation commissioning engineer who is installing something in the field, or if you are the operator starting or stopping a pump, or if you are the maintenance engineer doing a calibration, even for the decommissioning and even for the modification phase in the life cycle. It is basically for everyone. So that is the only correct answer, which is also the majority of the group following here today. So that's already a good sign. I will stop sharing and I will continue with the slides. So who shall follow? As I just mentioned, and I give you the example there already, simple answer is everyone. Everyone in the life cycle. Now, what we often see is that in some projects in the past, people will ask specific dedicated, like let's say you are the operating company, you are the end user, you are selecting your engineering contractor very carefully, you are selecting your manufacturers, your suppliers of devices, components very carefully, and you ask him to be, a good citizen in functional safety. You ask every single provider to have a functional safety management scheme. And then we are then talking with that end user or with the operating company. And then we start to realize that actually all this good information about functional safety management is somewhere being stored away in the documentation file on the project. But the end users themselves, they also need to have a functional safety management. And why is that? Because we will see here that any supplier, which is a second bullet already, any supplier that makes a functional safety claim on a product or a service. Now, brainstorm on a supplier of a service. What does the end user operating company do in the life cycle? They operate the safety instrumented system and they maintain the safety instrumented system. As by such, they supply a activity in the life cycle that makes them also a supplier of a functional safety activity, and therefore also for them functional safety management is applicable. And many end users are actually not even considering that, because they had the opinion it's only for those specialized companies which we did hire enable to provide us some product or service in our facilities. Now, simply speaking, we say if a supplier, that is coming from a standard by the way, if a supplier makes a functional safety claim for a product or service which are used to demonstrate compliance to the 61511 standard, well, that supplier, no matter who you are in the life cycle chain, that supplier shall have a functional safety management scheme. And it's the word shall have. Shall means it's a normative requirement for anyone that wants to prove compliance to the standard. Now, having a procedure is one good thing, but the second or the third last bullet over here on the slide, that's an interesting one to stop a few seconds to think about that. Procedures shall be in place to demonstrate how adequate you are using that functional safety management system. And I give you an example. How many of you here today that have logged in have in your own company, in your own facilities, wherever or whatever, let's say, discipline you're coming from, you most likely will have a quality management system. QMS, you will have an ISO 9001 as an example. Now, how many of you, if you are not a quality manager listening to this, but how many of you have used the quality management system for your daily activity last week as an example? If I ask that question, majority would probably say, oh yeah, we have a QMS, Tino, but actually I have maybe read it. If you're lucky, you may have read it. People will say, well, we know we have one, but actually we never read it, Tino. And then I said, okay, fine. What is the point to have a quality management system if you cannot prove how did you use that system in your daily activities? Same here for functional safety management. It doesn't make sense to create a monster of a procedure. Like I have seen already monsters of procedures. It's absolutely, well, it's lunatic to see how people will try to cover this with massive paper procedures all linked to each other that no engineer can use it anymore. You have to come up with a scheme that will benefit that people, when they do follow it and they can prove how adequate they follow it, that they are able to minimize the human factors. What I'm giving away here, and I call this a giveaway because it is free of charge, I'm giving away in this blue text some hints and tips. what the standard in function safety management is trying to achieve, or trying to, let's say, tell you what you should achieve, enable to achieve functional safety. And I will start here with the first bullet. And if you would look into chapter 5, which is your function safety management description in the normative section, part 1 of the IEC 61511, the first bullet of chapter 5 will ask you, tell us something about your organization and resources. That means the FSM will be dedicated, written, specific for your company, and in your company, based most likely on your quality management system, on your organigram, on your organization structure, on your liability, on your departments, on your organization, on the responsibilities, accountabilities, on the people in that type of job responsibility, also on the competencies. The competencies specific, we look at 3 factors. We will look at formal training for the activities you are responsible / accountable for. We will look on know-how check. That means how will we check the know-how for those activities which you are responsible for. And also we will ask you to prove evidence on experience of that activity that you are responsible for. Second bullet, we will look in risk evaluation and risk management. And some new topics in the risk management in the new edition 2 is called, you shall carry out a security risk assessment on that, let's say, project, on that facility, on that maybe system, whatever you are building, whatever you are, your activity responsibilities in the life cycle. And I come back on that security risk assessment. That's a new topic by edition 2. Of course, we had risk evaluation, risk management from the process safety point of view, but now also we have the same from a security point of view. And security, as some of you may be aware already, is a new normative requirement. There are references in the standard, one of which will be the IEC 62443 standard, which is a security standard, which you need to have a look at, also need to manage here based on function safety management. The third bullet is safety planning. I would say compared to edition 1, edition 2 has not changed much. It's all activities needs to be defined before you start to do them, of course. In safety, simply speaking, we are not doing anything before we have planned it, before we have scheduled it, before it is being put down on paper. And it's who is doing what are the responsibilities, accountabilities, etc. That's all done by the safety planning. The fourth bullet here on this first slide called basics number 1, because we will continue with basics number 2 on the next slide. Oops, that was too quick. Implementing and monitoring. You have to think about, you may come up with procedures, but how do you implement those procedures, those guidelines? How will you guide those engineers to do that? And we will also have some monitoring. Monitoring will mean, how do you measure the quality of your activities which you are responsible, accountable for? And that's here what you will see is the procedures shall be implemented following the satisfactory resolutions of any recommendations. So special recommendations, when we do assessments, we will look at all the recommendations are of course being followed, are being closed, there is no open item left, etc., etc. And to follow up with the last 2 bullets of the function safety management, we have here the assessments. Again, assessments, those are those stages 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Shared competent judgments needs to be coming to help you with the assessments. Independencies between the people doing the design and the operating and the maintenance phase activities of the life cycle. The audits, the periodic audits, when they will be carried out, how are they followed up, what are the revisions. Sometimes we also do the gap analysis with the assessments. So we make the first gap, then we have to see after X amount of time that the gaps are closed. And the last bullet is the sys configuration management. Simple things in there like every single document, requirements, revisions needs to be monitored, needs to be captured. All the revisions of all your firmware in your installation, things like smart hard transmitters firmware, things like the operating systems of your safety instrumented system, the safety PLC or the ESD systems. Everything needs to be traceable, everything needs to be maintained, because we're going to certainly need the configuration management in a very, let's say, important role for our security management on your system. Right, so that Mauro is back. That's our second poll for
Yes.
the webinar.
Since we have no questions from the audience, we raise some questions and we launch another poll. Here it is.
So I will read the poll for you, and I actually took this poll out of some misconceptions in the industry, which I heard by several people around the world, or by several, let's say, forums, discussions, etc. So 61511 FSM, so Function Safety Management, is less important for a SIL 1 than, for instance, for a SIL 3 application. So some people think it's an independent on the SIL 1, 2, 3, that is a different criteria for a standard. It's not applicable for SIL 4 applications, or regardless of the SIL class, applicable for all IEC 611 applications, or none of the above. And again, of course, if you know your material, if you know the standard, if you know the requirements of the standard, that's another easy question, which looks like out of the poll coming in, that's what we see happening, Mauro. It's another almost a giveaway, which is fine, because sometimes we're running out of good poll questions, but it's just to do some interactions with you to see you're actually physically still there.
Good.
And I think we can nearly close the poll, because Mauro.
Yes, we had also a very high rate of response. So we end the poll, and I start sharing result to all.
And as you see, only 4%, which is like almost nothing in the group. And I feel sorry for the person. Maybe you misclicked the poll, which is also sometimes happening, because the majority here, 96%, that means the entire group listening, already figured out that function safety management, regardless what SIL level you try to achieve, has actually nothing to do in the 61511 with your SIL level. So that's the correct answer, is C here. Regardless on the SIL classes, it's applicable for any application which falls under the 61511 application. Okay, I will stop sharing and I will finish this webinar. And I took a source here out of a document that some of you may know, but since February 2020, we have a new document out called the TR. TR stands for Technical Report, which is number 4, and that's the IEC Technical Report number 4. Not to be confused with Technical Report number 4 down in the USA, which is the ISA Technical Report 4, which is part 1 and part 2, which is also, for your information, it's still under review. It has not been released. What happened was in the US, in the ISA committee, they adopted the IEC 61511 edition 2 in, if I remember well, in September 2018. Now, September 2018, that's that's now almost a year and a half ago. Based on the new edition 2 from the ISA, called now no longer 8401, it's now called ISA 61511. They're also writing a technical report number 4, which I'm actually almost saying dying to wait until it will be released, because I always appreciate the practicality of the reading of the documents from technical reports, especially when they come from the ISA. I'm not saying that I'm not dying to tell you here that the technical report 4 from the IEC is not from the same quality. It's from a different nature on how they combine those, let's say, wise or guidance wording together on a report called TR. So for your information, a technical report is not normative. It's an informative section on top of a standard. So the first common misconception, according to the report number 4 of the IEC, is that apparently in the industry, there is this hype of people thinking that it is less important for a SIL 1 than it is, for instance, for a SIL 4. And as you already heard on the poll, and as everyone had the correct answer, I think we can skip this first bullet that is not in this group, which is logging into this webinar. Now, project teams desire for a, let's say, a ready off-the-shelf implementable solution resulting in a formality behavior of ticking off boxes. Very often seeing with larger, let's say, maybe engineering contractors or with larger system integrator companies. They do have some procedures, they do have some formality. And sometimes the guy, because he is so used, the engineer is so used to follow that checkbox, he ticked the box actually without really thinking what is the reason behind the question. I'm now starting to tick off, said, yes, I have done that. So sometimes people's behavior is more like it becomes a formality. Have I ticked the box? Yes, I have ticked the box. Have I really done the work, which is all described after this question, the tick box? Maybe that is something that needs to be enhanced in your daily activities. And also there is often a desire to defer consideration of the performance monitoring and the ongoing FSMs to after the project startup. We have seen many times the cases there is a certain behavior that they think about it, but they will do it once they actually go live or once they actually are on site with the end user. Well, typically that is too late because FSM needs to start from the very first activity of the life cycle, which is still your process hazard and risk assessments. A simple lifecycle example depicting in the standard is not sufficiently detailed enough for some of the activities that you may do. So you may need to have some senior, or not senior, you may have some competent people helping you which are involved in doing assessments because they may give you some hints and tips which you may learn of in the activities that you are maybe responsible for. And again, that is where I opened my focus here on, or opened my speech on the webinar, saying that too often in the industry, people are blindly, and again, blindly focusing on paper. And they say, oh, it's a SIL2 transmitter, or it's a SIL2 or a SIL3 PLC, and blah, blah, blah. So therefore, our installation is SIL X. And they have a calculation, they do their magic, they're getting some data from a database, from a book, from a industry database standard, whatever. And they all of a sudden said, that's also applicable for our industry or for our installation. Regardless, what is their proof test interval, what is their proof test coverage, what is their proof test consistency, what is their environment, it will be the same failure rate. And that is what we see, well, still very remarkable, that some people, the moment you start to challenge them, the moment you start to ask them the questions, where is the data coming from, that's where they start to think. Right, and last thing is commonly misunderstood is that accepting the grandfather clause, which means you have an existing installation, you will have to prove that your installation has been maintained and tested as per the previous standard. And some people think that on an existing system, they don't have to do function safety management. And that's also one of the misconceptions. And last, before I will stop this, the systems tend to be changed and interacted less frequently than, for instance, a BPCS. That's why the periodic reviews on safety engineering competency is more important than for those engineers who are maybe daily, weekly doing some small modifications or changes in that control layer, which is called the BPCS layer. Right, finishing off my webinar, and then I will give it over back to Mauro. We can support you with the SIL manual, which I have no doubt that some of you may have already a SIL manual. That's here the edition number 4. In that specific edition number 4, I have been writing chapter 7, which is the IEC 61511. It's like an executive summary. And in chapter 8, I have written a specific chapter, which is called the Safety Requirement Specification. If you do want to have this book, if you have interest for that, you can send us an email. We have some solutions for you. We also have some pre-recorded webinars, which are a bit older. These are from 2017. That's a link which you can register yourself. You can download. Also, the one we are doing now will be not on this platform. That will be on a live YouTube channel from GMI. As Mauro was saying, we are still, despite this, let's say, strange time called COVID for most of us, where we are limited in the way we move, we act, we work. Well, we found a solution now where we are providing the functional safety, the flagship training from TOV Rijnland, which is the Engineer SIS Competency Review. We found a solution where we are providing worldwide a virtual training. However, as we are a very quality dedicated certification scheme here, we are still providing our exam supervised by a human being. That means, although we are providing the training virtual, The exam will have to be written. We have worldwide some centers, exam centers / offices that we can have you coming in, or your colleagues or your people that you may know. We have these people coming in into separate batches where we keep the distance from each other. And of course, the exam is monitored like in the face-to-face classes. We also provide some cybersecurity fundamentals and some security risk assessment training courses. All above are, of course, subject to passing a exam and able to get your competency certificate on your own name. Of course, we do lots of in-house trainings lately, especially because of the cybersecurity. We do it, of course, all virtually. Webinars. We do lifecycle support. That's the consultancy part of our business. And we also do the security consultancy part of our business is now on the 62443. I hand this over back to my colleague, to Mauro. So if I remember well, I stop sharing, and then you will share the Q&A and I will have to give some answers, correct?
Yes, Tino, I try now to share. You just you should see now the presentation.
See that? I can confirm that. Thank you.
Okay, very good. So now we have question and answer section. I have seen there were during the webinar itself not very much questions, not at all. On the other hand, I have also seen that most of the answers to the poll were correct. So I would say today we have a kind of qualified audience, Tino.
Or maybe sleeping audience. They don't want to interact with us. That's fine.
well, at least the poll will answer it correctly and with a high rate of participants.
Apologies.
So let's go to the yes, question and answer before to close the webinar. Let's say that these question and answer were collected during registration phase or during previous webinar on the same or similar topic and subject. So, Tino, first question is how to ensure company FSM meets the expectation.
Okay. Yeah. In the meantime, Mauro, by triggering their, let's say, their spirit, I got some open Q&As coming in, which I will handle after this slide. Let's first handle this slide.
I cannot see that, so you have to handle by yourself.
You don't have the Q&A open.
No. Okay, I have seen.
I see. All right. So how to ensure that the company functional safety management meets the expectation? Well, when there is a functional safety management in place, then
sorry, I think I did some mistake, Tino.
I think you stopped sharing or you closed the presentation.
Yes, sorry, my mistake.
It's one or the other.
I try to recover the situation.
No problem. If you have a problem, I can share it from here. I got it also in backup open.
I should be back. Yes, maybe not to the right page. Okay.
Very good.
Sorry for that.
That's okay. When there is a functional safety management in place, that means that you will have to prove what is the quality of the activities you are doing. And you can only do that by a kind of a measurement scheme, a monitoring scheme. That means that once you have done your activities, you are supposed to put your verification findings onto a report. We call this a verification report. And that material, that report, that topic will be actually being assessed from a independent view. That's a senior competent person, and he or she needs to make an expert judgment on findings. That means sometimes the expert judgment will do some spot checks. They will not redo the verification. They will do some spot checks and they will try to find out if what is on paper is actually being carried out. Now, besides the content of the functional safety management itself, you cannot get a functional safety management compliance without having a quality management compliance. So quality management and functional safety management will almost go hand in hand together. But as I said already in the webinar, and I will not repeat to spend too much time on this slide, you need to think about when you have a procedure, how do you prove how you follow that procedure? That's the second bullet. That's the adequacy needs to be proven on your activity. And of course, you will have to have a functional safety manager in place that will monitor all that. Okay, Mauro, if you allow me, I will read those Q&As that are coming in. And I got
Yes, please.
the first question from a person asking, we have products certified by external agencies as well as by the manufacturers themselves. Both can be considered at par. Do not really know what at par means. I think the question is in the sense of you have products certified by external agencies as well as by the manufacturer themselves. What is there the difference? Well, I can tell you now that both standards, IEC 61508 and IEC 61511, do not require certification. They do require an assessment. So when you say external agencies, as we all know, the big agencies in the industry doing this, they will make an assessment of a product and they will put this assessment findings on a piece of paper, and that paper is called a certificate. And those manufacturers among each other are using those independent, let's say, accreditation results assessments on a piece of paper to have the competition between each other to prove what is the quality of their products they have achieved. However, by 61508, what is required if you want to claim a SIL 3 compliance on your equipment, on your system or your device, the 61508 requires a independent from your organization assessment. And that's where the external agencies for SIL 3 are coming in. For a SIL 2 on a 61508, it's an independent assessment from an independent department, from the same department who actually achieved that SIL 2 compliance on that equipment. And for a SIL 1, it's an independent person. So to answer your question with the manufacturers themselves, they can do it themselves all the way up to SIL 2. So there is no reason to go to an external agency to get an accreditation for a SIL 2. You are allowed, you are totally allowed by the standard means of the 61508 to do your own assessment as long as maximum SIL 2. But as a nature in the industry, they go for the highest independencies and they go to independent accreditation. It's more like it's a better belief or an image for the companies to show someone else independent from them has a credit test system and make a statement what the quality is on their equipment. Second question, how to get the TR 611, 61511, the TR4, the report number 4, February 2020. Very simple, go to iec.ch, stands for Switzerland, go to the web store of the 61511 and purchase that document. That's a copyrighted document, so that's certainly not a free of charge. It's not a big price, it's a very small price, but that is available on the IEC web store. And then the last question from the same person, are you planning to send us the copy of the Q&A? I think we do. I think
I answered, Tino, just to confirm that they all will receive either the main presentation as well the question and answer presentation. And just to confirm, you will also have the chance to review the same presentation on GMI YouTube channel. So you can go and you can review that. Okay.
Next.
Next. Let me try. Next. Okay. Okay. Look, I let you reading the question in order to avoid to introduce.
No problem. So the question was from this person who registered in this webinar. The question was saying, can a function safety management plan be part of the quality management scheme as a standard method, or should it be issued for every project? So, right. As I said here in this slide, in this answer, when a quality management system is in place, that's our starting point, of course, when we are trying to achieve a function safety management. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. We don't want to reinvent the hot water. So that means if you have a scheme in place, we actually will take it as a starting point. And that will be the basis for most of the fundamental items that we will need to prove evidence in our function safety management. However, sometimes we recommend to keep those split, because I've seen that some people, excuse me, I've seen that some people, enabled to win some time, said, well, we don't have to describe this, it's already part of the QMS, and they refer to a section in the QMS. That means whoever will be the function safety manager or who will be the assessor, inspector of the FSM quality will have to have both documents in front of them or with them. And that can become very, let's say, bulky in terms of in terms of a matrix that is linking all those documents and pages and chapter to each other. So sometimes, depends on the size of the project, we recommend to keep it split, or sometimes if it is a large organization with massive procedures and documentation already, of course, we don't want to rewrite all what is already existing, and there we have to refer to a, let's say, common section between the two quality procedures. Now, furthermore, that's the last bullet. I see this often with let's say, projects, dedicated documentation. They have an overall, for a big company, a quality management system and also an FSM quality management system. But then they will have one dedicated, call it a dedicated quality or a function safety management sheet only for that project, where they will go in detail about the project details, like who in name of the engineer is actually doing that type of job, which is referring to the overall FSM, where they have maybe based on a job profile and on a job responsibilities, they selected then the person based on the competency to fulfill that role. But when that person is then maybe on the next project, not in that role, in a different role, that is where you see a dedicated, let's say, customized per project, a sheet which will have a specific name or a specific person or a specific department or a specific third party / contractor in that sheet for function safety management. Yes, Maro.
Yeah, we can go ahead, or we have a new questions if you want to check and maybe give an answer.
I didn't see that. Thank you. Okay, the question reads as followed. Up to SIL 3 is used in the industrial requirements, where SIL 4 is used in the nuclear application. Well, correctly saying that for the IEC 61511, SIL 4 is not recommended. They ask you to use other means of risk reduction. In other words, the maximum SIL 3 is recommended to be used in the process industry. And we are here clearly in a 61511 webinar. So we are dedicating ourselves to oil and gas, chemicals, petrochemicals. New by addition to is pharmaceuticals and food and beverage. And their standard clearly says that we should not go into SIL 4. So in the process industry, there is also this hype in people thinking for any high integrity pressure protection system or a HIP system, we do need a SIL 4 system. Well, that's again one of this concept that is living on a HIPS, which is actually not as per standard. It's maximum SIL 3. Regardless of that, SIL 4 in the process industry will not be found. Now, where is SIL 4 used in a nuclear application? That's another misconception which we often hear. A nuclear application standard does not even have SIL classes. They have Class A, Class B, and Class C. And Class A is the highest level of safety in nuclear. And for a Class A, you need to find a non-software related programmable system to solve your Class A. That means that is where all the solid state controllers are coming in. That is for a SIL 4 solid state controller, which you do have on the market by 2 or 3 vendors still. That type of controller could be used in a solid state configuration. So all the software programmable, application programmables, safety related safety PLCs, which you are using in the process industry, are not allowed in the Class A level of a nuclear. Only for the Class B, which is the lower level of safety level in the nuclear, that's where a programmable system would be used. But to come back on SIL 4, SIL 4 is not used in nuclear because they use Class A, B, and C. Yes, Maro.
Okay, so I clicked as answered. So we come back to the original question and answer. Is there a template to prepare a functional safety management plan?
Very easy answer. Answer is no. So the answer is there's no template. You will see the standard will say you shall describe this, but they will not give you clear guidance. So if you even buy the standard, read the standard, and you have never seen a FSM template, you will not do cut, copy, paste, fill in the blanks, and that is your FSM. An FSM is based on competency, is based on know-how, and as you can imagine, in the industry, we have seen, let's say, quite some very good detailed FSMs. I have seen other FSMs without naming any specific details, but I would say in a humble way, they were not even worth the paper they were written on. They were just a bunch of text that people are thinking with that they have an FSM. That's not the purpose of the standard. Again, the purpose of the standard, to keep it simple, is to minimize human failures. So think about the activities you are responsible for and try to come up with a scheme that people have a benefit from when they follow it, that it will be reducing a human failure in the activities they are responsible for. So again, the standard is a good engineering practice. They give you some hints and some ideas, but you still will have to perform. You still will have to do things. Yes, Maru.
Okay, let's go to the next. So the new question is, how do control system engineering and functional safety management interplay?
Okay, I'm trying to understand the question again. I read this in the registration. I thought, what does this person means to say? I think to remember that the person that filled in that question is actually providing some control systems in the industry. And I think they are talking about a control system here, which is in the control layer, the process control layer, which is not 6.15.11 related. So what is the first bullet which we show over here, that the 6.15.11 standard is a function safety standard for anything above the risk reduction factor more than 10. That means opposite, anything which is lower than 10, sorry, which is maximum 10. So lower than 10.1 as an example. So anything up to maximum 10 is allowed to assign to a non-6.15.11 related control system. However, you need to comply to some very specific new rules or new requirements from the edition 2 of the standard. And I can give you now already the summary that if you try in your layers of protection analysis to dedicate a risk reduction factor, even though you only take maximum 10 for a non-6.15.11 related equipment or layer, there are very strict rules to make it almost impossible to put it. And I give you a typical example. People buy a very high quality, redundant process basic control system or a DCS system. They are controlling their application with that, which is totally normal. That's why you buy those systems. They are putting then their interlock in the same system where the control may cause the initiating source of the hazard to be happening. In other words, your control system could not keep your control where your process layer would not start to cause the hazard from happening in the first place. Well, if you then put the control interlock to stop and isolate that hazard in the same control layer, and you try to claim 10 in your LOPA as a risk reduction factor, the standard edition 2 is clearly saying you are allowed to do only that, claiming 10 for that interlock, if your protection layer is totally independent and separate from that control layer. And in most of the DCS systems, when you only have one system redundant, and you put and your control and your interlock, and you took 10 for that layer in your LOPA, they most likely will not be independent and separate. And then the standard is saying, don't do it. So very simple. Why do people take 10? Well, they want to save one silband at the end of the equation. So people are very creative, very, let's say, efficient in playing with numbers on a piece of paper. So they do engineering paper for safety, but that's not what the standard is meant to be used for. So that is another topic that I would like to put here, the FSM on top of that, because I do remember the question came specific for this factor 10 on that control layer. Yes, Maru, let's keep on going.
I have a very last question for you. So, what are the standard stating for every supplier of product or service active in the safety life cycle? I think you answered already this.
Okay. What are the standards stating for every supplier of product or service? So that's a SIG 1508. But I'm trying to think. Ah, no. For a supplier, yeah, okay. I was still in my SIG 1508 story with my. All right, sorry. Now I understand the question again. Well, a supplier doesn't have to be a manufacturer supplier like a SIG 1508 supplier. Any supplier that is doing an activity in the life cycle. That means you are maybe the company providing HACCPs in the industry, or you are the company maybe providing self-verification using a calculation tool in the industry, or maybe you are a supplier going on site and do physically installation commissioning. So it doesn't matter which supplier in the life cycle from which activity you are, FSM is for everyone. And as Mauro was saying, we have answered in the beginning of our webinar, so that's why here we can be very brief. It's a normative section requirement from part 1 of the 6.15.11. That means no project will comply to the 6.15.11 without evidence that you also cover functional safety management. And functional safety management, for your reference, is described in chapter 5, which is called clause 5 in the life cycle. And there is no project that can comply without proving which activity, and there are all the clauses all the way starting from clause 5 itself, which is the FSM. It will go to chapter 6, 7, 8, 9, all the way to chapter 19, which are all dedicated specific for the phases of the life cycle. That's how I would like to close. So FSM is applicable for everyone throughout the entire life cycle. You cannot put FSM only on the EPC contractor and not maybe on the maintenance team with the operating company. It is for everyone in the life cycle. Thank you, Maru.
Yes, so this is a very last question, but this is, I will answer to that. Can you please arrange a similar session for selection and introduction of safety relays? The answer is yes. We are already arranging that. I invite all of you to check on our website the list of upcoming webinars. Furthermore, and you will find all webinar and some of that for which you will have interest. So as said in the beginning, we are covering different subjects from intrinsic safety to functional safety together with Tino. We are also covering application or some product specific presentation, like in this case about relays. So yes, the answer is yes, we have that. Just check the live webinars list on our website and you will find it. If not, we still have the chance to arrange a dedicated webinar for specific customers. So you can apply also for that. Good. We have a very last question. This is for you. We would like to get your feedback about today's webinar. And so, yeah, it's always important, as said in the beginning, the quality for us is something important. So including your feedback will be evaluated, your feedback on webinars. Just to remind that GMI is offering this kind of webinar. We are trying to transfer our knowledge to our customer and potential, and keep in mind that we are expert and our main activities is to engineer and to deliver a product and solution to the market. So if you have any issue with intrinsic safety, functional safety, you just think about us. We may have the solution for you and for your headache. Yes?
Maru, there is one more question coming in. How about certificate of attendance?
Okay, the answer is very easy. you just drop me an email. I will show in the next slide our email addresses. You just drop an email, or you just reply to the email you receive together with the two presentations, whatever you prefer, asking for the certificate. We are providing that, provided that the person who's asking for that was participating for the entire, or I don't know, it is 75% of the presentation. You will get it. You will get it. Let me check. Is there any other question?
Yeah, we had one more question coming in from the same person. How can one be certified based on the standard of application? If I understand this question, because I'm not sure that I understand it correctly, I think you are trying to ask, can you certify an application based on the SIG 1511? And the answer is yes. A process, let's say, unit or a safety functionality itself. Let's talk about a safety function, like a safety instrumented function. We can certify the functionality from end to end. That means from sensor all the way to final element. And what we will use for that, we will first seek, of course, do we have all the subsystems, say components, instruments, system, etc. Do we have everything SIL suitable? Of course, it would be great to have all kind of documentation to prove they are suitable for that SIL. And then we can actually certify from end to end the safety functionality as an application. Yes, we can do that. We cannot say we have a SIL certified standalone, let's say a transmitter. If you put it on the table, it has no function. But when it is installed, correctly installed, if it has been engineered correctly, if it has been wired correctly, that transmitter becomes a role in your safety functionality. And again, we can certify, we do certify safety instrumented functions from end to end, but we cannot say we certify specific one item like a transmitter or a barrier or something on his own. It has to be in the function of the safety functionality itself. Okay. I think
we still have another question, which I'm not able 100% to understand. How the SIS systems are different from SIL-rated systems?
Don't understand really the question from this person, but how does SIS systems are different from SIL-rated systems? Not sure. Maybe this person, if you're still listening, you can try to give us a bit more on your question, because I am trying to understand. A SIS system for me is a safety instrumented system, is a combination of devices, subsystems. And those different subsystems can all have different SIL levels. Example, you can have a safety PLC in the middle in your loop, and the safety PLC is maybe accredited up to SIL 3. You may use a safety relay from GMI up to SIL 3, but then you go into your solenoid to power off your solenoid, and maybe the solenoid itself is maybe SIL 2. And then you go to your subsystem assembly called your final element, and there you have maybe your actuator, your smart positioner, your ball valve as an example. And there you may only have your smart positioner, maybe SIL 2 as an example. That means, how do you get to a SIL performance? That is why I just said we can certify the performance of a safety loop from end to end. And we will seek, of course, in the industry, where in our subsystems do we find some SIL compliance evidence? If that is your question, I'm not really sure, but that is what I'm trying to read in your question, or what I understood in the question. So I was trying to answer it, if this is okay for you. If not, you can still type some new question, and I can try to re-explain if I understand your question better. But that's how I would like to leave the answer now.
Okay, there is a very last question. Do you have any interest to consider business in other markets for safety instrumented function, such as machinery with PL, performance level approach, or automotive ISO 26262?
That's okay. That's specific, the machinery directives question. I mean, do you have, it's more, I think, a personal question to us as GMI. We are a process industry based company. That means that yes, some of the equipment could be actually suitable to be used in the machinery directive, but I am the wrong person to talk about the machinery directive because I have absolutely zero point 0.0 competency and experience in performance levels in machinery directive. That is where we have other experts in the industry doing this type of work, consultancy and expert judgment or training, etc. But I am the wrong person to give you any comment. I would love to consider the business, but again, I don't have any expertise or know-how. So I would feel like totally lost if I'm trying to give here a decent answer. Sorry for that. Okay, Mauro.
Okay, I think we have no more, even the system is telling me there are 5 open questions, but I don't see real open
No.
questions.
It is because we need to close them. I am now starting to close them because we
Okay,
have answered them all live. So
okay.
that's what
But
I'm
we
doing.
can, in the meantime, close the poll and we share the result. No, let me say, not. I would just like to thanks for this feedback. It looks like Tino, you performed very well. Most of people say excellent, and which is for me not a surprise. And let's stop sharing and let's close this webinar with the very last page. And before to thank you, these are the email address of Tino, of myself. If you want to address us any issue, question, we would be glad to support you. As said, I'm working in sales, so I would be more than happy if I start receiving from you requests for quotation or open discussion to find a solution with GMI product. Feel free to do that. And again, thank you very much. And see you. Yes.
One last word. We will also launch very soon the new schedule for 2021. So if you do want to have more about the topics we discussed on functional safety, and if you feel like you need to prove yourself to be competent in the industry, we will launch our 2021 schedule for next year, which is very hard to predict because no one knows what the corona or COVID by then will be looking like. But we will try to solve it with the majority of the training will all be provided either virtual or either face-to-face in countries where it is still allowed to do face-to-face. But that is coming up. So you better stay tuned on the website of GMI. The schedule will be coming up in the next 1 or 2 weeks of all the locations around the world where we will try to help people to become competent or prove the competency. And I will be the trainer on that specific topic. So I would be very pleased to see some of you coming into the training. Thank you, Mauro.
Thanks to you and thanks to all. See you next time. We
Okay.
can close.
Thank you. Ciao, ciao.
Bye-bye.